Hey there, Laker fans. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I'm your host, Vinay. I'm here with my co host, Raj. Uh, we have had some things happen since the last time we spaced, but we want to make sure that we got on the right foot. Raj, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well, man. Summer is definitely here. These are the
Yes.
doldrums of end of July, early August. But I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Trying to go back and watch, summer league and stuff like that, and dive into all the new players. But also just taking some time off as well, staying off online and as much as you can in these dead days of July and August. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Like the heat's still on, and but we're like you said, we're in the dog days of sports season in general. I think the only thing that's on right now is baseball.
Hmm.
Which if you're a baseball fan, it might be a great time for you. But I do want to say this before we start. For all the people that are in the spaces, and for the folks that are going to end up listening to this on the pod and YouTube, me and Raj talked about this after Summer League about like how this is a dead zone for NBA content or just people are kind of quiet. I don't follow that
Yeah.
many people, so my timeline's just quiet in general outside of the few folks that I follow. Um, but to all the people that listen to this, to me and Raj talk about Lakers basketball or basketball in general, whether it's in a space or on Spotify or on Apple or on YouTube, dude, our numbers have been great. Like we're not chasing
Yeah.
numbers, and we're just kind of just doing this because we like to talk about stuff. We're not trying to do like any clickbait stuff. Like we leave all that stuff for the Stephen A. Smiths and the Colin Cowers and what all their brands are about. And it has been like I just want to take a second before we started talking. Like I want to thank all the folks when you end up listening to this, if you're listening live in this space or if you end up listening to it later, like we genuinely appreciate the folks. Like the listenership, even during the dead period, has
Yeah.
like increased significantly. And like I just shared this morning, I shared some of the numbers with Rod. I was like, dude, I am shocked that people like obviously people want basketball content, but you wouldn't think people would tune in to listen to us talk about the politics of basketball or the human element of adding a player and him wanting shots or but dude, Laker fans are very basketball fans. Like they're very locked into it. They care about stuff like that. So as always, like we say that, I always say it at the end. And I'll probably say it at the end again. We humbly appreciate the folks that tune in because we see it, in the listenership. People playing the pod or playing, joining these spaces live, and it's been really awesome. So I just want to make sure that like we acknowledge that because like I know it's just me and him talking. We don't bring guests up and stuff like that. And eventually that'll probably change once we get a better
Yeah.
grip. Once Elon decides to stop doing whatever the hell he's doing with this app, we'll probably figure out some consistency and whatnot when it comes to how we want to do this. But we just want to I just want to on behalf of both of us, like we just want to really thank everybody that continues to tune in. I'm shocked, dude. Like I'm very surprised with the performance. So I don't know if you want to say anything, but
Yeah, no, we really appreciate it. Me and Nate talk offline a ton, and we're just like we just put that up to a public platform, really, and just having people listen to us, kind of nerd out, really, on
yeah.
intricacies of basketball, and obviously look at the granular picture as well. But just to get into the detail of it, no pun intended there with that. But
Yeah.
yeah, we really appreciate it, man, and we'll hope to have more stuff as the summer goes on. Obviously, we'll with more things that get released, players that get
Yeah.
signed, we'll kind of dive into them deeper. But yeah, we appreciate it. The numbers have been great. We've been looking, every once in a while, we're like, oh wow, like it's so we're trying to grow this. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely appreciate it. So let's jump into it. That there's not been a ton of news, but there's been some news, with some of the teams around the league for players that the Lakers were potentially vying for, specifically Christian Wood, that people have been keeping track of. So we'll
Yeah.
get into that, and we'll get into that for a second because that's going to be the main topic of today's sort of pod. But as always, we want to try and hit on some of the news that's happened as of late. So before we get to the basketball news, Elon's doing something with this app. I don't know what it is. It's gone from being Twitter to being X, and they're not called tweets anymore. I'm sure some clever journalist is going to come up with a name that he's going to, adopt, and they're going to be called Zeets or sheets or seats. I don't know what he's going to call them, or eats. So we'll figure out. And I don't even know what these spaces will be called. I wouldn't be shocked if he rebrands it into something else altogether. How has your Twitter experience been through the chaos of whatever this dude has been doing?
Yeah. You know, it's crazy. I've been like more offline really than
Yeah.
most. I've kind of just been doing my own thing. I go on and off, but really like it hasn't changed much. I've seen a lot of uproar on the name. Honestly, Vinay, I don't care what they call it. I mean, that doesn't really change for me as long as, you know, the website stays the same. I can adjust to whatever it is. Just let us talk hoops in peace. Let me have my mutuals and let me kind of connect with people as it was before. Like the name to me doesn't change. You know, Elon probably has a lot of disposable income and he can do whatever the hell he wants with a asset that he purchased. So if he wants to change the name, then go for it. Just kind of keep it. I think Twitter is still a public domain. It's still a publicly traded company.
Yeah.
So I think there are, you know, things you have to kind of keep in line when you do that. But he obviously doesn't care. I mean, he changed the name, which happened a lot quicker than I thought it would. But my experience really has been the same. We can still do our spaces. The For You tab or the following tab is still there. So as long as all those things kind of stay in tune, I think I'll be all right. So I'm gonna ask you this because this is the thing I've seen. They're like, oh, I'm gonna leave the app. No one's going anywhere. Like
Nobody's going.
Let's be real. Let's be real. Like I haven't seen a single Threads screenshot in like 5 days. It feels like that thing lasted a little while, and maybe, you know, that thing grows. We'll see. But for now, I think like people are gonna stay. It's just this idea that people are gonna run away to another app. I think Twitter has kind of laid a long enough foundation that it will be tough to kill that in whatever time that Elon has been here. But you know, I don't put it past him to do it. It's just I don't think that time has happened yet.
Yeah, never underestimate the laziness of somebody. Like it's like forget getting out of your house to go run errands. Like some people won't even switch apps, and I'm one of them. I had the Threads app, and I just deleted it off my phone because I'm like, dude, I don't even open this app, and I'm like, I have this thing that I do. I try to practice like. I know people go around saying that they're minimalist, but I like actually try to practice minimalism. Like I like reduce my wardrobe down. So like the folks that watch the YouTube videos, the reason I'm always wearing a black shirt is because I literally am like Homer Simpson. I only own black t-shirts that I wear around the house because I just wear the same thing every single day practically. But
I'm the same way, man. Black shirt, like it's so easy. I can wear it to the gym and then I take it home. Like it's very easy.
Simple. But yeah, I try to
100%.
practice digital minimalism like on my phone. So I try to delete apps that I know I just never use. And like if I have to go and re-download it because I'm going on vacation and I have to download like the Airbnb app or something like that, then whatever, I'll do it then. But it's been kind of nice, you know, it's been kind of quiet, especially for the past couple of days. So it's been interesting to see what happens. But you know, that's all technology. We're not a technology pod, but I thought, you know, that was kind of big news, so we should probably discuss it. But there was some news that happened today at the time of this recording, a few hours earlier. There was this big hubbub. You know, the Saudi Arabia, the UAE. I don't know exactly who, but there's a team out in Saudi Arabia that offered a soccer player an enormous amount of money to come play for them, which is like over $750 million or something like that, maybe even more.
For 1 year,
for 1 year of playing there, and it's happened. You know, they've offered, I think, Ronaldo a ton of money, and I don't follow football like that very closely, but those guys are international megastars, right? That like everybody watches soccer around the world, and they've gotten paid crazy money. And LeBron, you know, kind of tweeted out, and I think Giannis before him actually also tweeted out that like, you know, if they want to pay me, you know, I'm more than happy to go play over there. So it sparked like this whole conversation. And we discussed it, I think a few pods ago, that there was a minor investment by the Qatari fund into the Washington Wizards. And I think Adam Silver's already come out and said that a foreign investment company will never formally own like that. He doesn't foresee that ever happening, a foreign company. Now that's like, you know, on the business side, you know, a foreign company doesn't necessarily have to be that. You find the Magic Johnson or something like that to kind of be the guy who manages the inspect. Yeah, you know, and then all that stuff kind of disappears. It's not. So I wouldn't believe that that'll never happen. But you know, like we've seen it. You know, there's a lot of foreign investment. There's the NBA is trying to go global. Jokic, Giannis, Doncic, like all these guys are, you know, and obviously Wembanyama getting drafted number one overall. It's a global thing. But one of the things I was like having a debate in our group chat was like, if an outside country like Saudi Arabia wanted to start its own league, um, you
Right.
know, how like would these guys go? Now, in all honesty, anybody gets offered 700 million or even 500 million or even 250 million for a single year, everybody's leaving. Like nobody's not
Sure.
saying yes to that money as long as there's no crazy strings attached. But what do you think the number would have to be to get LeBron? Like LeBron said, Giannis said, what do you think the number would have to be for them to go to another country and play?
So I'm sure Bucks ownership just loved Giannis, putting that out there that he
Yeah.
would, he would go on the next flight if they offered him that contract. They're like, oh, you have a few more years left. You've signed the deal. LeBron, same thing. I'm not sure what the number would actually be. I mean, I'm sure they can throw out a huge dollar amount. I remember this conversation, obviously different context, but do you remember when like the lockout was happening and the
Yeah.
players were kind of speaking about starting their own league, right? And
Yeah.
I remember the conversations around that, and it kind of had this battle of pitting players and ownership against each other within the fans, right? They're like, which side do you side for? Which side are you on? And my I always thought was like the amount of stuff that goes into making a league is a ton. I mean, if you listen to like not just ownership but governors and like general manager and all those stuff talk about in terms of like what they have to support, the room, the travel. I just don't think that's realistic. Now, can they steal one or two players? Yes. Like I think that's totally in reason. They're not gonna go and get like I saw, Draymond obviously posted. I've seen stuff about Christian Wood. It's about like Christian Wood or like they're not stealing mid-level players to go. They're gonna steal the big brand ambassador,
Right.
superstar guys. And again, like maybe do you go there and lose US sponsorships? Like, that's kind of the pull that you got to think about.
Right.
I just don't think it's realistic. I just think we are so far away from that. I know Messi was a guy that I think just got paid a ton to go to like Inter Miami or something. I think
something like that.
I think that's the team. And I think it was like Mbappe. I think I said his name right. That's the guy that got offered like $700 something million to go play, in their league. I just don't think it's realistic where Saudis would start their own league, steal enough NBA players, and then also unless it's just a money laundering scheme, which I mean I don't know. I'm not too inversed with that, but like I don't know how you'd get your money back. There's just not enough arenas to fill up, in my opinion, over there. Yeah. And then getting the TV, deals. Are you gonna watch James Harden and Damian Lillard overseas? Like I don't know where they're getting their money back from. So I just don't think it's realistic. I think it's a fun conversation. They're not going to steal like the player on a vet min and pay him $80 million a year. Like I think that's the confusion that's happening. But what do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I don't think NBA players would get $1 billion because I think I think Americans are probably underestimating how popular soccer is around the world. Like there's, globally people are going to watch Messi and all these, all these dudes, play the sport, and they're like in their prime. They're like I think there's Mbappe guys, like he's one of the best players in the world. So it's like, and he's in his prime too on top of that. So it's like one of those things where, they still command a ton of money, but I don't think they would command that kind of money. But even then, it still might be much more worth the single year of whatever they get. Even if they get $100 million for a single year or $75 million, that's more than what they would get. In the current league. But yeah, it's an interesting situation because what does the league look like? Are they actually taking care of you in terms of like facilities and all that sort of stuff? What's the competition like? Like who's going to tune in to watch, James Harden torch guys that are like nowhere in his league? You know what I mean? Like it'll be funny, but it'd be kind of boring to watch, I can imagine. But this Draymond thing was funny because when he tweeted that, I was like, bro, I don't think you get it. Like, I think they give you less money than the Warriors probably give you.
Oh man,
like you're not like a premier guy, dude. Like I'm not sure they are offering you money to go over there and play. And it's not that this Draymond is just like, like I get it, you're with Clutch and it's LeBron and all that sort of stuff. So you feel like you have to tweet something out. But I was like, yeah, I think they'll give that money to LeBron. I don't think they're going to be knocking down your door to call you over to Saudi Arabia to play. But I think it's fascinating. And I think it just kind of tells you, even though it's purely hypothetical, I think it's fascinating to think about like the direction the sport could potentially go in. Adam Silver's
Mhm.
talked about having like a team in Mexico or expanding the team even more, or sorry, expanding the league even more. Like, like just look at Luka. Luka is a Slovenian who plays in America who also speaks Spanish. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like that is, if you want the NBA to be a global league, that is, you would hope Luka wins like 2, 3 championships in a row, because that's the guy you want for the rest of the audience, the European audience and the Latin American
Yeah,
audience, and all these guys to come in. So it's just like, uh, it's fascinating to think about what direction the league could potentially go in as we get more, foreign-born players, and we get more, what's it called? But it's. I think it's a long ways away. I think there's a lot of
I
stuff
do
that has
too.
to happen before that happens. But it's fun to
Well,
speculate.
I mean, we're already we're not seeing it obviously at that level, but I think the new ownership that's starting to take the wave over the old guys, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I know this isn't connected per se, Vinay, but I mean, how much? I was just thinking about this because this wasn't really shown in the reporting. Obviously, Michael Jordan sold his shares, right? Of
Yeah.
his, so he's finally not the owner of the Charlotte
Well,
Hornets,
yeah, he's not the majority owner, right? I don't know if
majority
he.
owner.
Yeah, I don't think he sold his entire. Like originally, I thought he was
Well,
selling his entire stake, but
well,
I think he sold
he
his
sold
majority
control.
stake.
He
Yeah,
sold
he sold
controlling
control.
share,
Yeah, yeah,
controlling share. But like people, oh, Michael Jordan made a ton of money. I don't think Michael Jordan was struggling at all. Like you know what I mean? Like I don't think money was a huge. Obviously, I mean, I'm not in that space, so I don't know the difference between whatever he was making and what he sold it for. But that's not the point here. Imagine what it took for Michael Jordan to be like, hey, I'm not good at this anymore. Like I can't
yeah,
own
right.
a basketball team. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I don't think it was just because the Charlotte Hornets were terrible, because obviously they were. They let him pick the second pick as well, which doesn't make a
yeah,
lot of sense to me, but they do weird
nuts.
things. But like I think part of that also is there's like a huge wave of ownership coming in who are extremely aggressive. We've seen it with Matt Ishbia, right? I think the Grizzlies
Right.
owner is extremely, rich, not just in the NBA, one of the richest men in the world. Steve Ballmer as well. You see the way he operates, and you're kind of seeing this old ownership group like, maybe I have to kind of get out now before the spending gets to the
Right. Gets
point.
out
We
of
just saw
control.
these,
Yeah.
yeah, we just saw these contracts being doled out. Not that these guys didn't deserve them per se, but like these, like LaMelo Ball got the 5-year 206. Like I mean, like
Yeah.
you see these numbers starting to come out. Dame has a player options for like 65 million in 3 years. Like that's the stuff that to me that's interesting. This oil kind of money. I think the league is too, like, obviously it's run by the owners, and Adam Silver is the commissioner, so he has kind of say also in how teams get sold. It's not a free market. You can't
Yeah.
just buy, like the owners of teams have to be kind of gone through a process. So I just don't think that's close. But to me, the more fascinating thing to me, Vinay, is the new money that's starting to come in, and you're seeing it
Yeah.
with these aggressive owners, and what that does to old ownership, like a Michael Jordan, like the owner that owns our team. Honestly, like I mean, like it's an interesting conversation how if you can compete while like also trying to not compete with guys who didn't make their money from the league. Like they're not, Matt Ishbia is not making his money from the Phoenix Suns. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
so like
Yeah.
I think that's interesting to me. This Saudi money is a fun conversation. Maybe they steal one or two guys out of their prime. Maybe they go pay Carmelo to go like, hey Carmelo, like you out of
Yeah.
the league, you want to come play for a year for 50, no, 30, $40 million.
Yeah.
So
You
like
never know. Yeah.
I think that's more of like the threat. I don't think they're still like if LeBron goes to play overseas. Okay, let's just put this. They
Yeah.
offer LeBron, let's say they offer him a $200 million contract.
Right.
Is Nike promoting Nike's partners with the league? Are they, do they
Right. Right.
promote
Right.
LeBron James? Like I think those are interesting conversations as well. But yeah, like you said, I think this is far away. But a fun topic on
Yeah,
here.
and I was gonna say you mentioned Matt Ishbia. Like I was gonna say the new owners are also doing this thing for the folks that this will be another side thing, but like folks like he's doing kind of what Steve Ballmer was doing with the Clippers, where he's trying to make
Mm,
their games more accessible. Like the Lakers, we're Laker fans. We have to either watch it on national television or we have to watch it on Spectrum because that's the Lakers network.
yep.
But you see Ballmer trying to get them on KCAL9. Growing up, for me, I used to watch Laker games on
Same.
KCAL9, or I used to watch them on local television. And he's trying to make it more accessible. Now, Matt Ishbia is doing the same thing with the Suns too, as well. So one of the cool parts about this new ownership, and I think you see it with like the Grizzlies and like their social media accounts, they bring in local hip hop acts and
Yep.
stuff like that. Like they're very engaged and in touch. They're hiring people. They're very in touch with like the community that surrounds that team. Like Ishbia wants Phoenix fans and Arizona fans to lock in on the Suns. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't want them to, and so he's making it more accessible and he's making it free. Ballmer tried the subscription service. I don't know if it's still going to happen for the Clippers, but like, they're exploring that. I think these new owners are just like, dude, you can't grow a fan base if it's not accessible, and they're trying to do that. So I think new money has like this scary term, a scary idea to it, but there's a part of it that's also amazing. Like if you couldn't watch Suns games back in the day, and the Suns now have Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, like now I can watch them. Like and I don't have to pay for cable service or whatever it is that because if I can't afford it or it's not in my air service area, whatever it is. Yeah. So I think that's pretty cool that a lot of these owners are helping grow the game in that capacity too as well. Yeah. So it's fascinating. But yeah, I'm with you, man. I won't say I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if Braun got an offer like that. Not a $1 billion offer, but something very significant. But I just wouldn't be surprised if, because of his business ties, how closely linked he is to Nike, he's an ambassador for the NBA. Like, you'd probably think twice about it. But if he can use that kind of offer to get himself more money to build his empire, he's done wonderful stuff for his hometown in Akron. Yeah, like building hospitals, schools, assisted living for like families who like need it and stuff like that, like low subsidized housing. Like, dude, go for it. I know Russ does that out in LA. Like, there's a lot of players that do that kind of stuff for the community. Like that, it's awesome for them to be able to have the economic power to do something like that. Yeah. But that's about owners. That's about the news so far. We talked a little bit about the Elon stuff, but let's talk about some Lakers stuff. That's what everybody kind of tuned in for here. And recently, one of the things that happened over the past week was the Chicago Bulls were linked pretty heavily to Christian Wood, who's been also heavily linked to the Lakers. And you and I have speculated a little bit more than speculation. We kind of know that Christian Wood's already been given a veteran minimum offer from the Lakers. He's mulling a better offer for himself. He's a young guy. He's not old. He probably wants to make more money. So he's probably trying to hold out until he can get something better when the market dries up. Obviously, the Dame trade, the Harden trade, that stuff those are still big two dominoes that have to kind of fall out. And so, one of the names that was linked, teams that was linked to him was, the Chicago Bulls. And they were granted a designated player exception because of Lonzo Ball's season-ending injury. And they ended up, they haven't used it, but, they ended up coming to an agreement with one of their own restricted free agents, Ayo Dosunmu. So, like, that's kind of put them really close to the tax. That doesn't put them out of the market for Christian Wood, but a lot of people are speculating that competitive offer may not be there anymore. Now, whenever that happens, Laker fans will be in a frenzy, rightfully so. We do it with any free agent that we like. And there's been a lot of conversation about him. And you and I were discussing this, and I thought it would be an awesome opportunity for us to discuss the merits of like the pros and cons of not just like, and we've covered this before, like the pros and cons of adding him to the team, but thinking about it more from not just the basketball perspective, because I think most people understand like the basketball perspective. Like, he's talented, right? His issues seem to be non-basketball skill related. It's something outside of that, and that's why he doesn't have a market like people would think he does for his basketball talent. And I thought that would be I thought this space would be a great opportunity to just kind of talk about like what we've heard to what we can reveal. And then also just to discuss how you balance that, because I think that's been a theme that's been very difficult for us as Laker fans since we won the championship. Finding balance, not just in terms of having depth versus superstars, but also finding balance within the roster when it comes to roster building. So the first question I'll ask you is, at a veteran minimum, adding Christian Wood is not difficult. So we like the basketball talent, but when we talk about having roster balance, what is something that you think Christian Wood imbalances with the roster? What do you think? What's an imbalance adding him would cause to the roster?
Really quickly, we just went through all that ownership stuff. You talk about old ownership. I mean, Chicago Bulls are, right there as well with like
Yeah.
old ownership and don't pay luxury taxes. Paid it maybe once or
Yeah.
twice in the last 20 years. So that's why that speculation was when they signed IU
Ayo.
Dosunmu
Yeah.
for for the on the 3 year
I
deal. It
butchered
kind
his
of
name.
took me as well. Apologies to him, but yeah, like once they signed him, it was kind of taking him out the running. No, I think it's interesting because it's very easy to plug in numbers into it, right? Like I mean, he averages the 16 a game. He's also probably the most talented Anthony Davis replacement that you can find out there,
Right.
especially that's left on the market. There's just no other centers to me that can touch his ceiling. I feel like that spot though, Vinay, is a floor kind of raising spot that I would like in terms of in that position. And I think the imbalance to me is that it kind of, first of all, if you've signed Christian Wood, he's obviously getting signed with a promise to play. I mean, that's kind
Yes.
of when you have all these vet minimum kind of. I'm sure he has vet minimums throughout the league. Actually, I'm like 100% sure that's something that he obviously has on the table.
Yeah.
Once you get into
All,
that,
all 30 teams have offered him a vet minimum. That's the way I just assume his market is right
right,
now.
like he can kind of pick his spot, and I'm sure when that happens, there's kind of promises that need to be made in terms of why he makes that decision. And I think that kind of pigeonholes you into a spot where we had this whole discussion, I think previously about maybe they start Jackson Hayes, maybe like that was kind of reported by Dave McMenamin that's an at least thought that Rob Pelinka has been putting out there. And I think that just pigeonholes you, number one, on a team that's very wing heavy. Like we just went into signing a ton of wings in Vando, Rui, Torian Prince, etc. And I think Christian Wood would like to play the 4, and I think if he's your backup center, that's just not enough minutes for a guy I feel like that would want to play, and he's gonna want the ball. And I go back and forth on this, Vinay, because we do need like an AD. Like we talk about Rui as the LeBron insurance. Like you need an
Yeah.
AD insurance. He's probably the best out there. I just think there's a lot of other variables with him. And to me, the number one thing is the position factor, where he's going to have to play a lot of power forward when we're healthy. And I don't like that mix a ton. AD Wood and LeBron. We'll see. I think that puts us in a rough spot. Where are you at with it?
Yeah, so that, like when I think about imbalancing the roster, that's like one of the first things I think of. Like the minute allocation automatically becomes a problem,
Yeah.
because there's no guarantee that LeBron and AD are going to play like less than 32 minutes a game, or let's say 34 minutes a game. That sounds about
Hmm.
like the sweet spot. Like there's no reason for me to think that LeBron wants to play less minutes a game. There's no reason. Same thing for Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, he's probably going to get extended before the season starts, but like
Yeah.
that it just I just don't see that. And so because I don't see that happening, like we have to start filling in the minutes and the lineup combinations that work accordingly. So my concern is, you're adding a guy whose best skill is probably scoring the basketball to a
Yep.
team that has a bunch of guys that want to score the basketball because they're going to want to, make a name for themselves too. Max Christie is going to want an extension. We talked about Cam Reddish and the Lakers stimulus package that he's about to get from our franchise. Like he's going to want to make a name for himself, and it's not going to happen for him, for any of those guys, just being a defensive guy. You know what I mean? Like they don't
Yeah.
want not $8-9 million a year for their next contract. They want 15, 12, 15, $20 million if they can get it. And my concern is we add a guy like Wood, he's going to have that expectation too as well. And I think you summed it up perfectly. Like there's going to be a promise made somewhere. That's just, and this is not like it's not like to be like a black mark against our franchise. We just know that's how our front office operates. None of these deals ever get made with the idea that like, oh, you're just going to come in and fall in line. Like it just never works that way. We know that our front office makes promises to, free agents to come there, to do what it was like. Gabe Vincent got signed, and, we were shocked that happened. But then a story came out later, whether you want to give a lot of stock to it or not, like that he could compete for a potential starting position. And I was just like, what? Like when did this happen? Like when did like, and obviously D'Lo hadn't signed at the time, but then even after D'Lo signed, that was coming out. So like, I don't think that gets made up out of thin air, right? Like I don't think writers just make it up and they go, oh yeah, we signed Gabe Vincent. He could compete with
Right.
D'Lo for the starting game. Like somebody must have told Gabe Vincent that, and it may be true, may not be true. Who knows what it is? But like that's just something that like I think that's going to happen with Christian Wood too. Like I think the Lakers are telling me, yeah, we're going to start you at the 4 if AD's playing the 5, and then we'll figure out we'll get you 30 minutes a night. We'll find a way to squeeze it out. And we've seen Darvin Ham have to to make that. We saw it with Pat Bev and Dennis Schroeder starting lineups. Like we know how that works. That's just the business of basketball. So that's what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that we've got a nice roster of wings, and you can see how the minutes and the lineups could be allocated. And then you're going to add a guy who's going to kind of throw that. And that's not Christian Wood's fault. That's just, it's a risk that we're taking again. And I think it's very hard to get young players to buy into just do your role. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
it's not guaranteed for guys like that.
I guess this is where, I mean, I'm not just playing devil's advocate. This is literally something I've been conversating with myself back and forth as, as Christian Wood's name has really, I mean, it's been everywhere. This offseason has been started for like 3 weeks now, and his name has resurfaced and was actually the talk of Summer League as well. Both of us were there, and Christian Wood's name comes up as much as any other player in the league. Shockingly, yes. A lot of things that aren't really positive in his direction, but like his name definitely comes up there. I guess if you were going to, Vinay, create a situation, this is what I've been doing in my head, okay? If you're going to create the perfect situation for a player, take the name out, who has off, I guess not off the court concerns, just, I guess, identity issues on the court in terms of who he is as a player. I guess, like, behind LeBron and AD is kind of the situation you want that type of guy in. Maybe the Warriors are another situation. The Suns, I mean, I'm not sure they've really created a environment yet. They're kind of new, they're creating their culture. LeBron and AD at least have a set culture. They have a culture that has won. Darvin Ham at least has a much of like, we made the conference finals last year, so like your production wasn't a part of that. So you know what I mean? Like you are separate from that. You're not coming to a team that's needing you to excel. You know what I mean? So like that's the part that I go back and forth with. And again, you just look at the market. His name doesn't excite me as much, but again, you go very quickly into Biyombo. I see JaMychal Green, Blake Griffin, I think is going to get released soon. Like those are the names that are come up after. And so I guess my question to you is there a better environment to take a chance on a guy like Christian Wood? I still would, maybe just keep that open. Like I think that can also be a thinking point as well. But like I'm not sure a better situation comes up where. Like if Christian Wood was going back to Houston, I think that would be a terrible option. Or like a very young team like Orlando, where he's going to be like, just give me the damn ball. I need to get my stats. Right. At least here, there's a chance. You can, if you want to bet on Darvin Ham's leadership and ability to be a vocal kind of leader and motivator, and if you want to bank on LeBron, and I think AD and Christian Wood played together in New Orleans for a stint. And Christian Wood also played 13 games in Milwaukee with Darvin Ham. So there's a couple of through lines there. I'm not saying those matter right now. Christian Wood's obviously a different player from then. He's gotten he's gotten a real contract since then. But that's the devil's advocate I play. Where are you at with that, I guess, thinking in terms of if you were going to cultivate an environment for a player like this, is there one better than here? Or is it still just not good enough?
Yeah, that is, I think that's a really fascinating way to look at it. I think that's a very interesting way to look at it, because in ideally a situation where you're extremely talented and you just need to be excellent in your role and you'll get cashed out would be the perfect situation for any role player, right? So like that's essentially what we think of Cam. Like we think Cam, you and I both think Cam has the tools to be, have the same kind of, not explosion, but like the impact that like Lonnie Walker potentially had, made even better because Cam is a pretty good defender, on-ball defender compared to Lonnie, and to have like the same kind of impact like Caruso had, where he could just he'll have a reduced role, reduced expectation, but he has veteran mentorship. No better, mentor than the guys whose agency you're signed to, and LeBron, and you have AD, and Ham is shown to be a great leader of men and whatnot. So it's just like it makes a ton of sense. Like it honestly, like. You would think Christian would be begging to come to the Lakers. You know what I mean? Like whatever you want me to do. I just saw what you did for Rui Hachimura. You know what I mean? Like
that's a good point. Yeah.
Like but it's not happening. You know what I mean?
You're gonna be on national TV 50 times.
50 times, yeah, at least.
Right.
And if AD goes down and you step into his role, for whatever reason, and you're producing, you know what I mean? Like the way Rui did for us, Vando did for us, all these guys did for us. In small ways, like, we'll love you to death. Again, we always say this I say this every pod, but there's no better marketing machine than Laker fans in the NBA. And all we need is just you to help contribute to some wins. Maybe you have a moment here or there, or a special game here or there. like we'll make sure that your name is like regular in every, we basically help you go viral, make your name go viral for a good reason. You would think he would want that. Like you would think players around the league would be like, dude, I need to get to the Lakers because all I got to do is this. Oh, I just got to play defense, or I just got to make my open threes. Like, and he's extremely. We know he's talented. He's very capable, and like, but there's no urgency behind it. And we could be wrong. Could be the Lakers are trying to keep their options open. But from what I've heard, the interest is there on both sides. So it kind of makes me wonder. It's like, are you really in? Like, are you? Is basketball like? Are you just trying to cash out right now, or what's going on there?
So it's clear, like a guy, I think he's 27. I mean, I don't know how to have his exact. So I totally get him being in the, I need every penny I can get.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like I totally get that. But I look at it from just if I was obviously like not in his shoes, like 7 feet tall or whatever he is. But like if he can come in and be like, hey, the only guy I have to beat out is Jackson Hayes.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's how it should be looked. And Colin Castleton, shout out my guy Colin Castleton. But like I have to beat out Colin Castleton.
Yeah.
And he's ahead of, obviously that's a joke. He's ahead of Colin Castleton. But like I just have to beat out Jackson Hayes. Yeah. And honestly, I mean that should be a pretty good bet. We were talking about how Thomas Bryant asked for a trade, which again, the reporting on that is just hilarious, to go play behind a guy who plays more than the guy who's playing ahead of him.
Right. Yeah.
But again, like I think if Thomas Bryant, but to your point, if he stayed a Laker, I think he gets paid this summer. Like,
yeah,
in my opinion, at least he was what, putting up like 20 and 10. I remember, and he was getting post game quotes about LeBron saying, "I'm imagining Thomas Bryant and Anthony Davis front courts." Do you remember that quote? Yeah. LeBron came out and said, "I'm imagining Thomas Bryant and AD front courts."
I remember you were talking about it when AD was going to come back. I was like, dude, play AD at the 4 if he wants. Let Thomas play the 5. He stands out at the 3-point line anyways. So he can just shoot the threes, or he runs the floor when AD's blocking shots and he just runs the floor on offense. It's just,
Right. And then
I talked to LeBron about that. That's why he sent that tweet out. Just by the way, take credit for that. I give Bron that.
Right. Right. And then so like he goes to Denver and he plays behind DeAndre Jordan. I mean, so like, you know what I mean? Crazy. So it's an insane kind of arc there, going in the wrong direction for Thomas Bryant. I think he accepted a minimum deal or something.
I think with Miami, right?
I have no idea what team he's on. I'm sure he's in the league. I mean, he must have.
No, he did. I think he took a minimum deal with. I want to say it was Miami. I'll double check.
Okay. But in any case, like if you're Christian Wood, I mean, you got to beat out Jackson Hayes. I mean, I think that's something that. Yeah. At least in terms of training camp battle, that's something that you can probably easily do. No disrespect to Jackson Hayes, but I think it's interesting to look at it from that perspective. At least, I mean, Lakers have had a couple guys who come in and bid, kind of reclamation projects. Dwight Howard was the last one. Now Dwight was at a more end of his career, but similar kind of where the whole league was like, yeah, we're not gonna really touch Dwight Howard. Like he wants to do this, he wants his own touches. He doesn't understand who he is. And he came in and just quickly bought in. And obviously he was at a later stage in his career. As I said, Christian Wood, I don't think is that part of it. But I think it's interesting to look at that point because look at around the league. I just don't know another situation that if you were going to make that bet, this is probably the cleanest one. Like, okay, we're betting on LeBron's, ability to kind of harness a group and get them together and, make, LeBron has these things where he forces his whole team to come out to dinner, stuff like I'm sure. I just don't think Christian Wood and Luka were going out to dinner every night. Like I just don't think that was. I don't think that was happening. Like it's nothing against Luka's leadership style. I don't think him and Kyrie were like going out and Luka was whatever. That's not the point.
What do you think? What do you think team events are gonna be like with both of those guys? Like I'm trying to imagine.
Goodness.
Like, I mean, it's basketball, so obviously there's a camaraderie anyways.
They reconnect. They connect on that, yeah.
Yeah, so, but it's just like, what do you think Luka and Kyrie have, like, really anything in common to, like, just go and hang? Like, if they had to, like, you just think about this scenario, hypothetical. Like, imagine, like Mark Cuban goes up to Luka and he's just like, Luka, I need you to, like, you and Kyrie need to have, like, a one-on-one. Like, just go hang out, get to know each other a little bit. So,
sure.
Like, let's say like Luka gets Kyrie's like, you know what? Let's go get some coffee or something. Like, this is the only thing I can think of, right? Let's go get some. Like, what do you think they're talking about? Do you think there's anything that they probably have that's of interest? Like,
man, I have no idea. I mean, I'm sure they'll just talk hoops, right? Like, hey, like this is what I've done, and this is how or what was it like playing with LeBron? I'm sure those are questions Kyrie loves, by the way.
Yeah.
But I like it. But like I don't know, dude. My favorite Luca quote, I think though, I remember they asked him after, one game, like, "Oh, Luca, like who do you like to watch?" This was like during the season, okay, Vinay. This is in season question to Luca. Fair question. Oh, Luca, like, what's your favorite? I don't really watch the NBA. He's like, I think that
Like
was this season.
Kawhi said something like that too. He's like, when I go
Yeah,
home, I don't watch
yeah,
NBA games. They're like, oh,
yeah.
you didn't watch this guy score a whole bunch of points? He's like, no, I don't watch NBA at home. I was like, what the hell, dude? Like, you don't even care? All right.
Lucas like, I don't really watch the NBA. I watch like the yearly, which makes sense. I mean, that's where
Yeah,
he kind of
that's
grew up,
fair.
and I totally get that. It's just funny to hear from his perspective. I don't know. What Luca and Kyrie. It said that Luca was, was recruiting Kyrie. I don't think that was necessary. I think the contract
Yeah.
did that enough. But yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Where are we
It's
even
a,
going with that?
yeah, no. So I think you were talking about just kind of like
Mm.
this idea of adding guys like Christian Wood,
Yes, yes.
like being part of the locker room, and you were mentioning like would he want to join the type of locker room that we have, with the team leadership and
Structure.
all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and you were just kind of talking about that.
Right, yeah. So like I think like that would be the best situation for him. Now that could still burn, and that could still
Yeah,
crash and burn. But like that's the, I guess, least uh dramatic scenario. And the Lakers
yeah,
are obviously hard cap, so they have to be careful in terms of who they get. I just like I go back and forth with that. I would totally understand as well if the Lakers like, we're not going to a penny over the vet min. Like, this is what we have
hmm
for you, and these are the kind of things you're going to have to do if you sign, right? You're going to be behind, obviously, AD. We're going to start you maybe some games, start the games that AD sits, but you're going to have to be committed on defense and stuff like that. To me,
yeah,
is what my question is. Now, look, they might just go in there and lie. I mean, just like, hey, like, get your shots. You'll get your 20 points a game. You know what I mean?
very, very possible.
I don't know, but that's not. But
Yeah,
that's not. That's not. That's not like. That's not something just the Lakers do. It was reported that JaVale McGee, even with Dallas, the team we were talking about, was a promise to starting spot. Jason
yep,
Kidd very quickly realized, because a lot of times this happens where GMs, write checks that coaches have to cash,
yeah,
and Jason Kidd's like, I can't cash this check. Like, it's it's like, there's no money in this account. JaVale McGee is not good. So like he benched him, right away. Andre Drummond, same thing, right? I think with Frank
yeah.
Vogel, promised a starting job, and Andre Drummond started for the most part. When it mattered, though, Marcus Gasol started in the playoffs. So I mean, that kind of
Is
tells
it?
you probably what they.
Isn't it kind of crazy? Like I remember we were clamoring at the time, like, dude, give Mark a chance, because it's not that Andre Drummond's
Man,
bad. It's just not a good fit for what's going on right now. And obviously, we lost the game anyways with Mark, but they waited till like the very last game to play Mark, and we lost the series anyways. And then like the same thing kind of happened with like D'Lo. Like through 3 games, he was kind of stinking it up, and we're like, dude, you got to make a change at some point. You can't, because you can't rely on a guy that's just giving you nothing, like a no show, for that series up until that point. And then D'Lo finally got benched that final game. So it's like, like I wouldn't say I'm the most astute observer. There are people who are very much more aware of things that happen. But I thought it was kind of interesting that almost the same exact scenario with Andre Drummond and Marc Gasol worked out the same way it kind of worked out with like D'Lo and I forget who started from Dennis or something like that started
Dennis,
for him. I think it said, and like it just kind of makes me think sometimes that like, okay, there might be some politics involved, when it comes to this sort of stuff, and that's the part that kind of worries me, with this whole Christian Wood situation. He's not eager to come. I actually have a conspiracy behind it, which we'll get into in a second. Like, I don't think he's rushing to rehab his image. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's rushing to
right?
to take care of himself. So that's one red flag for me. And then the other red flag is, if we've got a bunch of guys, Gabe Vincent's going around saying, he wants to play for this franchise. He's a local kid from Southern California or whatever. Like, he wants to, be part of a historic franchise, wants to help win a championship. Like D'Lo, all this stuff he was saying, when he first got traded, and I'm a Laker fan, or I'm a Laker, and all that sort of stuff. Like, for whatever the end result of the season was, we want guys like that. We want guys that'll
Sure.
embrace the pressure of playing in LA, playing next to LeBron, and the circus of media that tends to follow him, and play next to AD, and have to work through his inconsistencies as a player. So if he doesn't want to do that, I mean, should we really be chasing him? Like, what do you think? Like, would you chase after somebody doesn't who isn't knocking on your door saying we'd love to play for the
Sure.
Lakers if you guys have an open spot? Like, is
That,
that a red flag for you? Because it is for me.
yeah, I mean that's the tough part. I think Christian Wood. I mean his biggest contract was what, the 3-year 41. I
Yeah,
think I was looking it up from. I think he got that from Houston, and there's already been what I think it's like 7 teams in like 8 or 9 years or whatever it is. I think guys like that. I think that's a great point that he's not trying to rehabilitate his image. Like he feels like I averaged 17 a game last year on
yeah,
really good efficiency. I played it on a team where the guards do everything.
yeah,
My coach hated me. Like I think that's how he felt. At least Jason Kidd just would not play him, wouldn't start
yeah.
him. Yeah, that amazing game against us. Remember in Dallas, the one where I think we came back in the game, but Christian Wood was incredible. Hit a bunch of threes, was
He was
blocking.
hitting like we pull up threes, and I was just like, dude, what the hell, dude? This guy, but it's the Lakers. The Lakers show up, you got to play your A game. Yeah,
I mean, Dallas people are like, it's a national TV game. I mean, Christian would
yeah,
understand. He was like blocking AD, if you remember that. Like I think
yeah.
he got one block on AD as well. That was probably the most he tried on defense that season. No, I don't know. I think guys like that, I mean, they have a bunch of minimum offers, so I understand him wanting to kind of wait and see if someone else can pay him more. But like that guy, it's a risk either way, right? But you won't know. I mean, even if Christian Wood came into the interview and was like, "Hey, look, I'm ready to block shots, run the floor. I don't need touches." Like you would never know until the season gets started. You don't know. Like
Yeah.
there's a phrase, "Winning cures all," but I also think like losing kills everything. Like
Right.
you have a guy where if you start slow, it's not a guy that's gonna be happy, especially if he's playing a really minimized role. So I'm interested in that. I just like I don't think you would know. I don't think you'll know his intentions, and you just have to kind of teams are just betting on the talent. But I would totally understand if the Lakers are like, look, these are our parameters. This is stuff you have to follow. If you don't want to follow that, then you can go sign somewhere else. I'd be totally fine with that. And I think that's kind of where they're at, Renee. Or do you believe that they are absolutely selling him the bridge of like, hey, you walk down this path, is all the gold in the world, all the riches come to you. So I don't know what's happening in those rooms. I hope it's the former. But what do you
I
think?
have heard that the reason why the Lakers have floated. I have heard that the reason why the Lakers have floated the idea of playing two bigs again is so they can land a guy like Christian Wood, because
Mm,
Christian Wood isn't going to come to a team. I feel so weird just saying his whole name every single time. I just don't want to keep saying Wood.
sure.
If you're listening, you're probably like, why do you guys keep saying his full name like in third person, like they're describing him? That's not. I don't know why I just keep saying it, but I think the reason why that you're hearing stuff like that about them playing two bigs potentially is to make to publicly broadcast like, oh, we're not just telling this to you behind the scenes. Like we'll tell everybody like, hey, you join us, we'll play you at the same time as AD. You don't have to be his backup. So I think there's a little bit of that going on too with it. But my conspiracy behind him is I think
Mm,
his agent has already talked to a couple of teams, or I think a couple of teams that are waiting on this Dame trade and Harden trade to happen.
yeah.
Whenever it happens, I think in the aftermath of that, whatever teams are participating in that trade or are waiting to see what happens at the end of the trade have told Wood and his agent, just wait for that to happen. But we have this deal here for you. We just need to
Mm,
see what the end result of these trades are. And it might be the teams themselves. It might be Miami, Portland, whatever the third team is, or it might be
sure.
the Clippers, the third team, and Philly, whoever it is. So I'm very interested to see. Like I wouldn't be shocked if those trades happened and then you quickly heard about him being like signed with whatever was left over that was more than the veteran minimum from one of those teams. And I could definitely see a situation like that because, like you said, he's too talented to have this bad of a market. Like somebody should be willing to throw like a little bit more than a veteran minimum to him if that's all he's waiting on. Like I don't think the difference to what he's asking for and what the market is a veteran minimum in like 20 million. Like somebody like I'm pretty sure he
Sure.
would take like a $5 million offer right now. But I think the team that wants to give it to him is just holding it out. So I think that's what's happening. And I think that's why we keep hearing his name so much when it comes to it. I think somebody's promised him more money. They're just not giving it to him yet until they see these trades happen.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I can see that happening. Usually guys that where we're like, oh yeah, he's a minimum guy. Like it'd be amazing to get him on the minimum, right? Those type
Right.
of conversations. Those are guys who make more than the minimum, which usually
Right.
what happens,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Like, remember we had like all the MLE guys. Oh, getting Bruce Brown for the MLE would be amazing. Well, yeah, like 8 other teams thought that, so he's obviously
Right.
gonna get overpaid. Brook Lopez, same conversation, right? Oh, getting Brook Lopez for the MLE would be incredible. He goes for double that to Milwaukee. That's usually what happens. So that could be an interesting point as well. I just like I bet for Christian Wood, and I bet his agent is kind of speaking these same things. Like, obviously the difference between 5 million and the vet minimum is a significant amount, but I think for a
Yeah.
guy like that, like, I think situation matters a ton. I think rehabilitation of not just your image, but like who you are as a player and like what you care about. And he's obviously has this net reputation now, where it's a guy that's just empty stats. I mean, that's a tough thing.
Very tough.
That's a very tough reputation to get out of, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're not on a team that's winning. So like that's a really, and most of these winning teams I think have vetmen left. I mean, there's not a lot of teams. Maybe Miami and Portland, as you talked about, and Philly. Maybe I'm not sure their money situation, or the Clippers. We'll see. Maybe they have money to kind of give them, but I think that's a really tough kind of reputation thing to get out of. And we talk about this all the time too. Once you accept a vet min, it's hard to get out of that too. Like it's very tough to jump out of that. But I mean, we see some cases like, is Dennis Schroeder a $13 million a year player?
No, I don't. Yeah, I mean that. In my opinion, no, he isn't. Like,
Yeah,
I think he's a durable guy and he plays hard, but I think there's a very clear ceiling on him as to his
exactly.
Yeah.
Like he's likely not a $13 million player, but guess what? You play hard as hell on 50 national TV nights.
You get something.
Like, you're gonna look good. I mean, so like I think that's a case where he can be sold on that. But I think like the overarching point is Christian Wood believes he's really good as he is.
Yeah.
And I think players like that, it's gonna be tough to change their minds. He averaged 17 on 50% from the field, like 38% from three. Like those are just numbers I'm sure that he's throwing around. Like, hey, I'm a guy that can still get baskets in this league, and I should be compensated for that. So we'll see where he goes. I understand both sides of this. I go back and forth. I probably still lean to like, let's try to find something better, but I would totally understand if this is the kind of route they go and they take a chance on a guy who has at least the talent to prove it.
Yeah, one of the things I think is important, and I think we have a nice example of it in Wenyen Gabriel, is there were very clearly times where Wenyen, like, you could be like, dude, we need him on the floor, and he's got to play more than 10 minutes, like even with the foul trouble or whatever it is that he was going through. Like, he was just too productive on the other end, too productive to not play him through his warts. And obviously he didn't get consistent minutes, but I would say probably one of the things that worked in his favor is he was just kind of willing to do whatever, right? From what it sounds like he was willing to take a non-guaranteed contract, which eventually did get guaranteed later. And he was a productive player. Now, it hasn't helped him in the sense that like somebody's gone and scooped him up. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if some team has like a few remaining roster spots and decides to just grab him as an extra body. Could be the Lakers too that potentially does it. But you can see like the distinction between the two things, right? Like Christian Wood, extremely talented, but wants a very specific situation to prove his talent. And Wenyen's just happy to be productive in his role, and he's willing to do it. And so, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, are you surprised Wenyen hasn't been signed? I mean, we watch. Maybe these teams just weren't. Like, I thought Wenyen was really good. Like, he's an undersized big man, and that's a very tough position to be in when you're not really a scorer. You don't really protect the rim. But I feel like high motor guys, like, to me, that's a skill. Like, high motor is a skill to me. Wenyen comes in and plays hard as hell. He'll crash the board. I think he's a smarter player than he gets credit for. Like, he can screen. He has nice finishes around the rim. There's obviously some playoff kind of ceiling there in terms of how much you can play him. But I'm shocked a guy like that can't get a deal anywhere. So I'm surprised at that. Well, let me ask you two questions. Are you shocked at that? Number two, like, is Christian Wood versus Wenyen Gabriel, is that a real conversation, or you're like, is Wenyen just kind of too much overlap on a roster that we already have? Or like,
am I shocked? I'm not shocked because I think his destiny is probably like a 10 to 15 player. Like, I don't think he's a guy who would be part of a normal rotation for most teams in the league. The other, it's also like it's like the basketball thing, right? Like, every year there's 60 new players coming into the league. And it's just like, it's guys like him who are going to have to fight for those positions, really. So, like, being a great teammate, being a great locker room guy, willing to do all the extra stuff in practice and on the floor when he does get, being impactful in the minutes that he has. Like, it's very difficult for him. Whereas a first round pick comes in to his team, Fino comes in, we get Colin Castleton, we get Maxwell Lewis, and then, Max Christie has to get minutes. Austin Reeves is already a success story. Like, those guys are going to eat up his minutes. Like, Colin Castleton's probably – we signed Jackson Hayes. We signed Colin – and then we got Colin Castleton, basically forcing his way to the Lakers. That's probably why we haven't signed Wenyen, because, the Lakers have some idea for both of those guys to take some of those minutes that maybe Wenyen was going to play. Should he find a spot in the league? I think he will. I think Wenyen's bound to land on a team that needs like a skinny big, essentially, that has a super high motor. And I agree with you. I think he did a fabulous job in like the spot minutes that we got out of him. Even hit a couple corner threes for us in important moments when we needed him to. So that is what it is. But the second question that you have about, is Wenyen Gabriel versus Christian Wood a real conversation?
Right.
It shouldn't be, but it gives you an idea of how the NBA works. You know what I mean? Like, just like how these decisions have to come about. Like, some teams, just look at the difference. And it's probably not a perfect example because there's a serious inflection point when it happened. But just look at what happened with the Warriors. They're one season removed from winning a championship. A single moment, the altercation between Draymond and Poole happens, and that changes the entire dynamic of the team. Obviously, they lost a couple of guys. Bijalico's, he went back overseas or something like that. They get Dante DiVincenzo. Yeah, they trade Gary Payton. Yeah, Otto Porter's gone. So they had some guys that just kind of went out the way, but not guys maybe outside of Gary Payton. Like, they're not guys that would drastically change your ability to compete for a championship.
Sure.
But you could argue, and Draymond said apparently he won't let the issue go. But you could argue that punch or that altercation that happened, was essentially what led to all the friction within or the disconnect. You could see Poole disengaged, and I think Warrior fans constantly are posting videos of Poole being disengaged with Steph Curry on the bench and all that sort of stuff. So it's just when you think about all that sort of stuff, and then you think about this situation, obviously we're extracting a lot from a completely different franchise and a very specific type of altercation. But, one bad apple can sour the whole bunch, if he pouts about how many minutes he's getting, if he complains about, his role not getting enough shots, whether it's privately or publicly. Imagine with the Lakers, Christian Wood gets unhappy and he decides to say something in a post game. I'm not saying he would, but I'm just saying, look at what happened with Russ. Russ would go in post games and say nothing at all, and LA media will do what it does. They would spin it into something negative, oh, Russ doesn't like the coach, Russ doesn't like Bron. It's so it's our fan base and I think our media is just one of those things where it's just we have to be really careful. Rob and Kurt and whoever else is part of this process, Joey, Jesse, whoever else is part of this process, they have to be careful with who they add, because you can't add our media is going to twist and turn guys, you know what I mean, into whatever they want to turn them into, and you can't add a guy who, even if he's right, speak in a manner hey, I'm not getting enough touches, because the moment that happens, it's he's screwed in that situation.
Right. And again, I guess that's why you're betting on your locker room, right? You're betting on, your culture, I guess. And, wherever LeBron goes, he takes his culture with him. That's kind of where he is, in terms of when he got to the Lakers, he obviously brought that from Cleveland and what he got from Miami. And I think that's what you're betting on. And you're also betting on, you signed Darvin Ham, not just for the X and O's, but to be one of those leader. They said one of the reasons that, I think it was widely reported that they didn't keep Vogel. They wanted more of a kind of leader, right? A guy who can kind of leader of men. Yeah. A guy who can really galvanize a group. And you're betting on that, with getting a guy like Christian Wood. And I think, not the same kind of way, but these are what these minimum signing, these are what these vet mints are for, right? That's the whole point. You get these, you try to shoot for to hit a ceiling with a guy that's really struggled or hasn't really found his place in the league. And Christian Wood doesn't fit that exact criteria, but he's a guy that, again, you're betting on kind of the talent. But with the Wenyen Gabriel thing, last thing, I mean, the Cavs, I was looking where he is now. Cavs just traded for Damian Jones, right? And
right.
Damian Jones was terrible last year. I mean, like the
Yeah,
Lakers were in absolute dire need for a big man who can run and jump at the same time, and Damian Jones could not
didn't do
do
it.
those
Yeah.
two things. And he was a 7 footer. I think he's 7 feet, maybe he's 6'11",
And he had a
whatever it is.
game against us, dude. Didn't he have like a game in Sacramento where he had like he had a dunk, a poster dunk or some nonsense like that. He hit a jumper. I was just like, dude, what the hell is this? I was
Yeah,
like, we need you
yeah.
to do this in LA. Whatever.
Yeah,
Anyways, go.
they tried it and he just wasn't good. But again, like the Cavs traded for and they didn't give up much. I don't think they gave up anything,
Yeah,
but went and traded for Damian Jones. And I'm like, man, and if I'm winning Gabriel, I'm like I beat that guy out in the
right,
rotation. Like
right,
I was
right.
Manny Gabriel was, I believe, was a non-guaranteed coming into the season, if I remember correctly. I don't remember exactly what he was.
Yeah,
But like I think he got his contract guaranteed in December or something like that, whatever it was. But he beat out Damian Jones was billed as like, hey, the Lakers got their starting center next to AD,
right.
or you know what I mean, or he can be your backup five. I think the vision, Vinay, was to start him next to AD. I believe that's what I think the vision was when you got Damian Jones. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just looking like winning Gabriel, and you look at how the league works. Like that guy was solid at least in his 15, 20 minutes. And it's probably not a conversation. I'm sure the Lakers are gonna lean Christian Wood pretty heavily. I mean, that's clear. Just the way where winning Gabriel is in the league, and where how many conversations start with, hey, Christian Wood, Lakers are, they're waiting on him.
Yeah.
Um, I just
You know
think
what? It could also be the other thing that all agents love to do. They could just be floating Christian Wood's name attached to the Lakers to hopefully drive up some more market value for himself. But I mean, you and I both kind of vetted some of this stuff on the back end. Like there is real interest from LA in regards to him. It's just he's not rushing to be here. So it's like, do I really want somebody who's not like gung ho about being here?
Yeah. I mean that for sure. I like Christian Wood's not coming here because he loves LA, or or like he grew up a
Yeah,
Laker fan or
he
something
doesn't
like
need our
that.
stimulus package. That I mean, clearly he
No,
doesn't think he needs Laker fans to market for him. So
no,
yeah,
doesn't want it. Does not want it. And look, that's fine. Like if he comes in, produces, like that's more than Lakers fans will love any player that comes in and plays hard and
yeah,
produces. I think it's fascinating to look at what you do with that roster spot, right? Because it could go terrible, as you just pointed out. Like there's no world where Christian Wood, in my opinion, because I've seen this floated, Vinay, and I'm tired of this. Like these people are human beings. Like this is not
right, right, right,
2K, right? You don't get to sim 40 games. Like it's not how this
right,
world
right.
works. Christian Wood is not sitting on the bench for 30 games. I mean,
Not
oh
happening.
yeah,
It's not happening.
he's not clapping for Jackson Hayes on the bench. And
No,
then
it's not
like
happening.
30 games in, Darvin Ham goes, hey, yeah, Christian Wood, you know, start tonight. Like it's not
Yeah,
that's not how this world is working. If you bring him
yeah,
in, he's a integral part of your rotation
yeah,
until he plays terrible and you want to cut him or do whatever, or maybe he shows that he's not good. But like other than that, I think like if you sign Christian Wood, he's playing significant minutes. He's not sitting there on the bench clapping, happy to be there. Like
right. Absolutely.
that's not what's happening this year. So I think that's something to keep in mind. If you bring him in, he's a guy that has to play. Has to
So
play probably a lot.
So that I think this is a nice transition to like this idea of what happens. Like clearly the Lakers are in a position where they've gotten, with adding Cam, adding Gabe, Max is what we expect to project Max. We both think that like Fino will be a little bit lower on the depth chart as he kind of red shirts a little bit of the season. Colin may get some more minutes just off the strength of what the depth we have at the what happens with these last two roster spots. Like one of the other things that like I think or I know you and I discussed was like when you add a guy like Christian Wood, like we've been positioning it as he wants his shot. So it's almost maybe a little bit unfair to him because we're trying to make it
Sure.
seem like he's demanding all these things, which he might be, he might not be. We don't
Hmm.
know the actual conversation. But there is this idea in basketball that sometimes you have too many mouths to feed. Like there's just too many
Yeah.
people that if there's no clear structure or there's no clear hierarchy, or if the players within themselves don't think that they're like, I got to defer to this guy because this guy is the better player. You know what I mean? Like when LeBron is on the court, people defer to LeBron for a reason. Like LeBron fans get upset. Like AD, don't give it to LeBron, go do it yourself. But like AD is always going to defer to LeBron because that's like his, like they
His
have a very
nature.
close relationship. That's I think I'm not saying I agree with it, but that's a part of it. Like that's a human element of basketball. But then there's the opposite of that, right? Like if you get Cam Reddish, Max Christian, Christian Wood in a single lineup, and maybe you also get Rui Hachimura in that lineup too as well. Like who's shooting the ball? Like I could totally see sequences maybe not Max as much, but I could totally see situations where, like, let's say Gabe is a backup point guard, right? Let's say Gabe is running that unit, and it's like Gabe, Cam, Max, Rui, and Wood, right? Like the defense might be a little sketchy in that situation, but like, um, there's three guys that are on that lineup that I could totally see shooting shots like every single time they come down the floor as soon as they touch it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Gabe and Max will probably play off of everybody else, but that can lead to issues. That can lead to friction too, in an organic way, essentially. And that doesn't have anything to do with a player saying, "Oh, I want my shots." That's just a player being confident in himself. Maybe Cam feels like he can take his matchup, and Rui feels like he can take his matchup, and Rui's getting paid $60 million a year, and Christian's like, "Oh, I could take my matchup too. I could take this open contested shot." Like we've seen situations around the league where that can become an issue, and it can actually hurt your team. Do you think that should be, even if it's not Wood? Say it's another talented guy. There are still a few talented guys out there that can score the ball. Do you think that is something? Do you think we're at a point now, like with our roster, where that should be a concern? Like we should weigh that possibility when it comes to these last few spots.
I think it should be a part of it for sure. I think the good part is at least a lot of these guys just got paid, so that helps a little bit, right? Rui just got his deal. Austin got his deal. D'Lo obviously got the deal. We'll see. He'll probably still want a little bit better contract going into his player option, but I think that does help in terms of getting buy-in as well. And look, I'll say this: if the Lakers like start off hot, if they're like 10-2 or whatever that is, no one's causing issues then, right? Like no NBA player is dumb enough to cause issues. Dumb is a strong word, but like no NBA player is causing issues to a team that's winning at an extremely high level.
Very hard to upset.
Very hard to do, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember the Warriors started like 21-3 or something like that, right? I remember like the year they won the title. There was no one who was going to cause issues on. Like no one's going to ask for more minutes. Jonathan Kuminga couldn't be like, I need to play more. Like the Warriors were like 21-3. Like sit down, like James Wiseman couldn't be like, I need more minutes. Warriors were like 21-4, whatever they started. So in my opinion, like whether that's Wood or another talent, no one's causing issues then. To me, it's when the struggles happen. And I think the part that's really tough and ain't a bake in is LeBron and AD are going to miss games. Like that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Whether that's 30 games, whether that's 25 games. The line to kind of cross of like, do you bring in a player that would elevate those games? Because I think Christian Wood would elevate at least those games, right? The 25 games that AD misses, let's just say AD. I'm not sure there's a better big out there to be like, hey, just go out there and get production, right, in those minutes. And that was the kind of thinking behind the Russ trade, at least the theoretical thinking, right? The theory of it was we'll bring in Russ when LeBron, sits or our bench. Russ can still put up the numbers, and obviously, those three didn't, acquiesce in the way they thought. But I think that's a similar thing. I think with Christian Wood in terms of he'll help you in those games, but like, what's the ultimate goal? Like, how much can you throw that line of like, okay, he's a really good floor raiser in that scenario, but then like when the team's fully healthy, what's his role? And that's a tough balance to me. Like if LeBron was like 30 instead of his age, and AD obviously can be the same, maybe that's a different conversation because you're not expecting LeBron to miss 25-30 games. You're not expecting AD maybe even a couple years ago to miss the 25 games. Now I think that's a real part of this that is a really tough part to also throw in the equation of 25-30 games, Vinny, is not nothing. That's a lot of games.
That's a ton of games, yeah. And in the West, go ahead. I think you were gonna say like with how
just like with how the West is, that's a ton. So like you have to, those games have to be in the back of your mind as well, and that's a tough like line to like walk in terms of we need this guy for this, but when we're healthy, he's probably going to have a really minimized role. I don't know how you kind of look at both of those things at the same time, but I think the Lakers have to. That has to be part of the equation. That's another kind of variable in this decision making here. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that does play like, I mean, and then the additional layer is if you make the playoffs, there's a good chance you may not even be part of the rotation, like the playoff rotation. So it's like you've done all this work. Like a lot of guys don't want to be known as just regular season players. They want to compete at the highest level. That's really how they make their money. Making names for, like, you see what happened with Gabe Vincent, you see what happened with Max Strus. Like these guys made names for themselves on the biggest stages, and they're cashing out because of it. And so even Dennis cashed out off the strength of what he did this season too as
Yep.
well. So good.
Oh yeah, no, that's good.
Oh yeah. And so so that's the part that like it's very interesting to kind of figure out. Like if we want to assume that our front office has made promises, or that's kind of part of how they operate, that they make promises to these guys when they sign, that instead of signing at this other place, we'll carve out minutes, and I'll talk to the coach. Rob, we're speaking with, like, as if it's anonymous, but like Rob is telling some of these guys that he's telling Jackson Hayes that we're going to find 20 minutes for you, and as long as you're productive, your minutes will go up, and you'll keep your spot in the rotation. Like, I don't think he's going to him saying, yeah, you're only going to play an 8-minute shift of the first quarter and the third quarter, and then that's it. You know what I mean? Like I think he's going to Cam Reddish, and he's saying, no, we need wings like you, and you may get a better dollar offer somewhere else. But again, you're in LA. We know you're clutch. We know LeBron has already tweeted out about how good he's going to be. Like we're going to find minutes for you. You just got to produce. You just got to be impactful in some form. Like we saw it with Vando, very limited offensively, but very impactful defensively, at least in the regular season. So it's like, I think those promises are still being made. I think those kind of things are still being said to some of these guys. And my thing is, like, if we've said it to Gabe and we've said it to Cam and we've said it to Jackson, like, it's tough to, like, and we know Rui already got paid, and we're going to ask Rui to, probably come off the bench. Like, it just kind of makes you wonder, dude. It's just like, how many more people can we do this for? Like, Austin got paid. He's fine. Like, D'Lo probably didn't get the deal he wanted. We talked about a ton about how his deal was amazing because it was way lower than we expected it to be. But, like, D'Lo is not going to be cool with his minutes getting messed around with, because he wants to, he's a young guy. He still wants to continue getting paid. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know if we can. You add another guy to that mix of 4 or 5 players who have basically been told the same exact thing. And then on top of that, he's not, like, really trying to be in LA, or it doesn't feel like he's trying to be in LA. He's just trying to make his money now. Like, I could see it, I could see it going the wrong way, and I'd feel bad for him if something like that happened to him.
For sure. And the last thing, obviously, these two players are completely different. I'm not comparing them at all. I just think it's funny. I remember, I think, like, the way Christian Wood gets talked about now.
Yeah.
I know people were talking about D'Lo a little bit. Like, it was kind of this, you know what I mean? It was kind of this, like, empty stats, doesn't want to defend, which for D'Lo, that's still true. I mean, I don't think he even hides that at all. I mean, even in the post-game press conference, he kind of reiterated, and I'm sure D'Lo's mindset here is not far off from Christian Wood's. D'Lo in his press conference said, I'm not getting better. That's like verbatim.
I am who I am. This is the player I am. Yeah.
Basically said, I'm not going to be able to attack your guard in isolation. Not going to be able to go right. Like, those are things that I'm just not going to be able to do. And so, but obviously, like, again, not
sorry,
comparing.
That's interrupted. Can I just say something? Rob must have told the LA media guys, dude, don't take that quote and run with it. Like, just let it die. Don't let it. Somebody had to have called in a favor for that quote not to be, dude, for that. Can you imagine? Like, I know, obviously the Russ trade happened, but can you imagine if Russ said that? Like, he would have gotten torched, the previous Russ, not our current Russ. Like, he would have gotten torched for that. And I was just like, wow, like, the reaction to him saying that, like, oh, I'm not going to try to, this is who I am. I am what I am. I was like, what the hell? Like, I thought LA media would have shredded him, but I was shocked. It was very mild, the response to it.
And I think part of it also, he was a free agent, right? So I'm sure like that went into some of the the backlash that didn't come from that. But I don't think this is just with D'Lo. I think a lot of players feel this way. D'Lo has made his money. He's made over. He's got the huge contract. He just got rewarded again. We might both of us think that's probably below the market that he wanted. But still, I mean, $19 million for a point guard that probably is not going to make another All-Star team. And there's no ceiling that is coming, right? So he's kind of who he is. And I think Christian Wood feels the same way. I think if you go to Christian Wood, you put a truth microphone in front of him, You're like, hey, like, are you trying to get better on defense? This summer. He's gonna tell you if he had the contract locked, and if he had
Right.
whatever his dream scenario was, he'd be like, get better on defense. I just averaged 17 on 50% from the field. Like, give me the
Yeah.
ball. Like, I'm not playing lockdown drop coverage. Are you crazy? Like,
What was the thing that was it? Jabari Parker said it a long time. He's like, they don't pay me to play defense or something
yeah,
like
they don't
that.
pay you.
I think that he said that a couple of years ago. I was like, what? I was just like, bro, you're trying to get back into the league. Why are you saying this kind of stuff?
Yeah, but yeah,
But yeah,
but again, like, so not to compare them as players, but like, I just think they were looked at very similarly. D'Lo was seen
yeah,
as that way, and D'Lo shot very well this year. I think he had career highs on catch and shoots, and he talked about that he made sure to bring that up in his in his presser. Like, so I think it's interesting to look at those players and see where they're at now. I mean, did D'Lo change who he was in LA? Not really. I mean, did
no,
it?
not really. Yeah,
Didn't guard any better. I think what he does is extremely valuable for the team. Like, in my
yes,
opinion,
absolutely.
D'Lo at his, like, even what he is next year. People don't want to hear this, but if D'Lo is just who he is next year, Lakers have a very solid starting
Yeah,
backcourt. He does
really
not
great.
need
Yeah, absolutely.
right. And so, and I think Christian Wood feels the same way. So that's kind of my closing thought on that. And it's interesting to look at those two players, how much the situation, kind of helped them in that scenario. Like, D'Lo was on a good team; he was part of it, but that's a team that got LeBron and AD healthy and
Yeah,
made a run. Right? Put Christian
yeah,
Wood on the Lakers last year, and they go to the conference finals, and he plays, his 15 minutes and gets a bunch of baskets. Maybe he's looked at differently. So that's just a edge of the story you can look at and see. But we'll see what happens with them. I just want to give that comparison out because I think
yeah.
if you go like 6 months ago, those two are viewed in a similar light in terms of empty stats, don't defend kind of players, and I think D'Lo has kind of at least got himself out of that hole, the empty stats player. But we'll see what Christian Wood.
Yeah, yeah. So we covered a lot of stuff. Um, yeah, a lot of different things. But I do think, like, philosophically, that conversation about, like, or just the idea of having too many mouths to feed, it
Yeah,
is like a legitimate concern because, um, like I said, we know how our front office operates, and we know promises do get made behind the scenes when it comes to certain things, and it is tough when you make that promise to 4 or 5 young guys who are
yeah,
all in the same exact situation. And, for some of them, they're not dumb, right? Like, they have agents that know, hey, look, even if you play well for the Lakers, you're probably not going to be on the Lakers. It's going to be some other team that offers it for you. So they may not necessarily be fully committed, to the situation, to the team that they're in. Not that they wouldn't play hard. They still play hard because they have to build their own value. But it's like, if Braun gets mad at them about not making a rotation, maybe they don't really care about it. They'll be like, oh, whatever, old man. Like, I'm not going to be here in like 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, I could definitely see that too as well. I could see situations like we saw that with Dwight. Like, Dwight was out of the league, but it's not like he was okay with AD telling him,
mhm,
that altercation that they had at the start of the season. I think it's a Phoenix game or something like that, the pushing match or whatever it was. Like some of these guys, feel that they can just go somewhere else and have a better situation. So I think I think that's a fascinating thing to think about, that, we're at a point now with all the guys that we have on the roster that we just really want guys that not only are talented and that'll be great in the roles that they play in. Every team wants that, especially out of veteran player. But it has
yeah,
to be a guy that, like, really is, like, committed to the team, like a guy that's willing to buy in, put the ego aside, not be interested in collecting stats, but just kind of wants to do it. And I know it's a lot of over analysis, I think, because we're talking about the 14th and 15th spots. But look, Anthony Davis has gotten hurt. We've had to call on guys like that. LeBron
yeah,
has gotten hurt. We've had to call on guys like that. We had lineups last year where like 4 starters were out, and we had to rely on our 10th through 15th guy. And so, as much over analysis it may be, this is still important, especially in the modern NBA. Every player matters, and I mean, the CBA, they're expanding rosters for that very reason
yep,
and making more players available. So we covered a lot. And you know, I think it'll be interesting to see what we do with those positions and what direction eventually goes in. If it's not Wood and it's somebody else, I hope they still keep that same standard of like we want a great guy that's going to be great for
Yeah.
the locker room, whether he's a project or a vet. So, Roger, do you have any last thoughts before we let the folks go?
No, I think that's it. There's just one, we'll close on this really quickly.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. Austin Reeves obviously went on the All the Smoke
Oh yeah.
podcast
You were mentioning him. Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
yeah. And so he, obviously fun interview. Austin went on there. He actually, I think he released today. He's getting his own shoes, has the AR ones coming
Yeah.
out, called the ice cream AR ones. I believe they look
Yeah.
clean.
Congrats to
Um,
him.
as he talked about how there were other teams, Houston and San Antonio. But I thought, to me, Vinay, the most interesting part of that interview, and it kind of got glossed over, and it's something that you tweeted about during the season. Actually, he said second half of the season we were just freestyling, and I thought that
Yeah.
was very interesting. To me, interesting point that again just got thrown away. But he said like second half of the season we were just freestyling. I think that's fascinating. Number one, I guess my question to you is obviously it's not a surprise. I think that's something that we were seeing on film as
Yeah.
well. Um, but is that changing now with a because he talked about getting a preseason and kind of a training camp to kind of
Yeah.
go. But that to me that freestyle kind of opened up like Austin's creativity. I think like that
Yeah.
opened up his ability to just run pick and roll. And you go back and it's like, yeah, that's kind of true. It was kind of just pick and roll here, and I think that killed us in the Denver series. But I guess what are your thoughts on that, on the freestyling, and is that something you think that's normal for teams, or like is that just because we had a new concoction of players? I talked about
Yeah.
the minutes in the last pod in terms of Austin, LeBron, and AD played more minutes together in the playoffs. They did the regular season, which is a nutty stat. I mean, it's like 16 playoff games. I mean, they already played more minutes than the whole 82 game grind. But I thought the freestyling was interesting. So I'm interested to see how Darvin Ham kind of combats that next season. But I thought that was an interesting point that he brought up in the
Yeah.
pod.
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of see it. Like you saw like Vando kind of be like a super effective player, like as a cutter and stuff. And a lot of that was like off of like broken coverage stuff, like just him just cutting
His
off.
feel.
'Cause I was just like, there's no way that these cuts are what's it called? They're not like design cuts or anything for him. And then like you said, like Austin when started getting the ball more in pick and roll, and he just kind of did what he loves to do in pick and roll, and he flourished at it. Um, I'm not surprised by him saying that because it did seem like that's kind of how they were doing stuff. I like the one that's distinct in my mind is like the Warriors game that we played without LeBron and AD played that
Mm.
game. And that game was like it was kind of wire to wire. It wasn't like a blowout or anything. I think it was
80 had
Golden
like
State.
8 shots or something like that.
Yeah,
Some
yeah,
weird
yeah.
number.
And yeah, we won that game. And like Vando was playing great. And D'Lo had some great moments. Austin had some great moments. And like, but when you watch that game, if I like rewatched it in entirety, I'd be like, well, I don't even know what we're doing. Like I don't know what we're running. And AD is like kind of passive because he's playing Draymond, and Draymond tends to like have decent games against him.
Sure.
And we still won that game. And then, I think I remember the timeline that night. Like Laker fans were going crazy. They were like, oh shit, we got this new Russ is gone. We got this new team, and we just beat the defending champs without LeBron. Everybody, this pandemonium. But like I could see it, and then you could see like how in the playoffs they were trying to find some structure, but because
Yeah.
D'Lo got wiped out in the Denver series, he had up and down games, against Memphis because they put Bane on him, or they put Dylan Brooks on him, and then eventually they had to put Brooks on like Austin. Like that would happen. So I think structure will definitely help him. But I think the best thing that happened post is we found out Austin probably found out exactly like, oh, I belong here. I can close out a playoff game. I can hit open shots. I don't have to defer to these guys. Like I don't have to defer. I think in that same interview he said like he had that moment in Vegas where he was on the first bus. It was like Russ, Carmelo, LeBron, AD, and like he was like the lone guy there. And
Yeah.
Braun told him like we're the Beatles, and like I saw that clip and I want to go look it up. I was like, dude, I wonder how many minutes this lineup actually played because this lineup sounds like it should be like perfect in terms of like floor spacing, rim attacking, defense. And I looked it up, and they had played 17 possessions together, and they were like a net plus 58 or something like that. And I was just like, dude, they never played this lineup. And like I was just like, let me just go see how many minutes Austin probably played with Russ. And I was just like, bro, he hardly played. Like that combination, like almost never played together, you know. And there was other guys. Avery Bradley was on the team at the time, and Wayne Ellington was on the team. This feels like ages ago, but it's just I'm not surprised by it. But I think everybody that's been saying that the training camp's going to help them out. I think that's going to be like I think these guys learned a lot about themselves through like this extended run.
Right. And I think it's impressive. I mean, if you can beat two teams freestyling, I mean, you could beat two, higher seeds. Obviously Memphis was I believe the 2 seed. They were missing some guys, but still, I mean, you beat a team like that. I always say, the best player we got in the trade was Austin. Like that's like we got, this version of Austin was the best player we got in the trade, as good as D'Lo and Vando and whatever Malik Beasley did, on this team. Austin Reeves was the best benefactor of the trade. And I'm not sure we get this level of like pick and roll, savvy and understanding of his game. And I think he's going to go into next year as the one. But yeah, like I think that killed us against Denver, though. I think you could see a lot of where it just divulged into LeBron threes. Like, and we were, some of them were just like, it's a 2-point game, man. And like, he just walk up 3, and both of us were like DMing, like, that can't be called. Like, there's no way.
There's no way. Yeah.
There's no way that was called.
Was it game 2 where Austin hit 2 threes in a row off the ghost screen action that
right.
Braun likes to run with guards, and then for some reason Braun didn't give it to him like the 3rd time, and he decided to take the side step over Jamal. I think he took the switch and then he shot it, and I was just like, well, we probably could have given it to Austin. Like I get it. You're LeBron, but I mean, look. I remember what did we say after that game? What did I tell you after that game? Who's going to tell LeBron James that not to take that 3? And what's the first thing Austin said? He said he's LeBron James. He makes the right play. So I was just like, all right, look. But I think that experience, Braun is a very cerebral guy. I wouldn't be shocked if he went back, watched those games, and say, you know what, next time when Austin has that matchup, I can give it to him. Like I can trust that he'll make something happen.
Sure.
And make it work. So
sure. So that's what I'm excited about. See those guys get more minutes together, more reps. I just think like getting all those playoff minutes together. I think that kind of like, that's almost double. And all those are obviously tense. Lakers weren't like up 3-0 in any series. No series was over right away. So all those games were intense. The defense, ups its intensity, and you have to run your actions through that. But yeah, I think that's fascinating that the team was kind of building, the plane while it's in the air and like trying to maneuver and run plays. And obviously they weren't running too crazy actions, but I think that shows a lot from Ham too, to be able to like, tonight we're doing this, next time we have to do this, to kind of adjust and force 2 playoff teams to kind of adjust to you. But yeah, we'll see with the more structure. Hopefully, that helps everybody. Again, those LeBron threes, the AD jump shots, the AD's lack of, offensive kind of role sometimes, where like 8 possessions go by and he doesn't touch the ball. And I think some of that is just, hey, we don't have anything structured. Like there's no offensive structure here. So like we just been running pick and roll 8 times, and the big man tagged every single time. So like AD just doesn't touch the basketball. And I think that's stuff that hopefully Darvin can kind of get the kinks out early, in preseason and all that. But
and I was gonna say that the other learning is and this will be my last thing, like Vando has a clear understanding of what do you got to do to be able to stay on the floor. The defense is already great, but we need this out of you. You got to be able to finish at the rim a little bit better. Like, and that's the difference between you. Like, we don't need you to do ISO breaking down guys off the dribble. When guys play off of you, cut to the rim, finish at the rim when you cut to the rim, because those opportunities will be there. And then for D'Lo, it's the same thing. Like, we don't need you to reinvent who you are as a player. I don't expect you to have like a 20% increase as a finisher, but don't get bullied off the floor. Like, don't let guys bully you. Like that I don't think that's too much to ask of some of these guys when it comes to it. But again, basketball is a very human sport. It's sports. We don't know if these players would want to do it. They may not feel like they need to do it. They're happy with where they're at. And like the level of physicality they want to deal with. So we'll see what happens. But the Lakers, I think, as always, the Lakers are in a great situation. We're trying to figure out this 14th and 15th spot. I still think Tristan's going to get that 15th spot. I saw him hanging around with LeBron, I think, when he was in London or something like that, or wherever he was recently before he went to the Messi game. So I wouldn't be shocked if Tristan is like a non-guaranteed contract, like as our 15th spot once we figure out who we get with the 14th. But As always, Raj and I want to thank, if you guys weren't here at the very beginning, the numbers have been continuing to grow at a pace that even me and Raj did not expect to have happen, especially during the dog days of basketball of the NBA season, essentially, since it's a year-round sport now. And we just want to humbly thank all the people that are in the spaces that are listening on Apple. The folks, you guys tell me that you guys watch the video on Spotify, because Spotify now has video playback too as well. And the
Yep.
folks that share and like and send comments on YouTube. We want to sincerely and humbly thank you folks for helping continue grow this platform, Lakers Detailed, into whatever it eventually ends up being. And you know, we're working on, finding formats where we can bring people up and speak, and maybe eventually do post games and whatever when the new season starts. But we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful evening whenever you listen to this. And if nothing else, we'll catch you in the next one. You take it easy.
Peace.